We'll keep this going. You are listening to Clay Douglas. I am the Free American. Got a late start today, but going to make up for it. Going to make up for it. I lost a few. Hello, Mick. Hey, Renegade. Henri hung in. We lost Lady K, but we've had a lot of progress. I shared with you, too, what Schaefer Cox had to say. But the most important thing is, folks, we just spent 10 years in Afghanistan. That's a waste of money and lives. We want the illegal wars to stop. We want our troops brought home. We know the war on terror is a fraud, just like all the other wars the government wages. The war on drugs, the war on poverty and all. We want the America we know and love returned to we the people. We're telling the government that we are withdrawing our consent to be governed until we have a government that respects us. We want a government that honors the U.S. Constitution, not the fascist document misnamed the Patriot Act. We want to live in a nation that looks out for its own citizens first, before it tries to police the whole world. Now, I take my hat off to these brave men and women who've used the stones, who have the stones, the balls, to use their Second Amendment rights to protect the First Amendment rights of the demonstrators in the Occupy Phoenix movement. I suggest that veterans everywhere do as this valiant group has done. They put on their BDUs, they picked up their weapons, and they openly protected the demonstrators from any potential violence from the Phoenix, Arizona Police Department. We need our veterans protecting us here at home from the enemies that we have here. There are other veterans in America who support the First Amendment that emulate this example. First, become a body of men. There is strength in numbers. The more men, the better. I would be cautious, Mike Harris says, to attempt this as an individual. Be sure to check the laws in the jurisdiction where you plan to demonstrate. Do not break the law. These men are exercising their Second Amendment rights to protect First Amendment rights of others. This is exactly what the founders intended when faced by a brutal, oppressive government. When we raided Waco, when the BATF raided Waco, folks, I formed the militias. Now, they tell you that. They tell you, oh yeah, Clay Douglas started the militia. What they don't tell you is that I did it in the governor's office, and I'm doing this speech this next Friday, the 11th. Well, a week from Friday, a week from tomorrow. I'm lecturing to a bunch of bikers, a bunch of farmers, a bunch of people, and to the sheriffs on behalf of the sheriffs. I don't, the militia, which I helped start and promoted in my magazine, and the ADL gives me credit for that. Thank you, you communist bastards. They give me credit for that, and I did that. They blew up Oklahoma after trying to demonize the militia, and they used Timothy McVeigh to try to lay that one on us. All right, let me see. I said I would take calls today. So let me see if we don't have any callers yet. That's 646-915-8774. We'll keep this stream going here for another few minutes and try to get the whole show here as we're to. I think we've got answers. I think my guest, Charles Miller, has an answer. I think this document here, this is what we give to the police, this is what we give to the sheriff department, and hey, they asked me, when the Homeland Security Assessment came out, and I put all that in my book on Mystery Babylon, the assessment came out trying to paint Christians as bad, just like they did at Waco. That was a church that they raided with 17 little children. Then the BATF blew up the Oklahoma City. Not a BATF agent lost his life, but there was one standing across the street to tell you, oh wow, it's a good thing I was standing across the street and saw that happen, because We've been testing those info bombs in trucks down in White Sands Missile Range around the corner from Clay, and so we knew what it was when it happened. Yeah. How about the explosion you planted around the columns down there that the eyewitness saw you planting? She thought it was modeling clay. Yeah, and then you didn't come to work to that day, and nobody was injured. But a few more children lost their life, and now you're helping the drug dealers, or the CIA and Mossad, who bring the drugs into this country, who have the planes and the facilities and the protected air bases to bring it in, and so you can get your children hooked, so you can keep supplying people for this whole insane laws against victimless crimes. Oh, you didn't cross that T, you're going to jail. What's that you got in your pocket, son? Oh, you're going to jail. And you'll be working for the corporations just like the Jews work for the Bayer and IG Farben in Germany, and the same thing is being done to the American people that were done to the German people. They declared war against the American people, and in my film True Face of FEMA declared war on American people. Yeah, our enemy's weak. Our enemy's weak. Pretty incredible. Okay, let me see what else we got here. Okay, how about let's hear a little bit more from Schaefer Cox. I think for young men, he's really got it pretty together, and they put him in jail, just like they put Edgar Steele in jail. There's an update on Edgar Steele on my site. He's moved up to the top of my page. We need to keep him in our prayers. We need to keep Donna Taylor and Mark Taylor in, who's still being victimized by the drug people. And let's hear Schaefer Cox. Wait a minute.
To make that email something that they send to authorize people to spend those make-believe dollars into the economy. Now, what those dollars do is they go out into the economy, and they bid up the prices. So, to make that talk about the national debt, and they're talking about authorize people to spend those make-believe dollars, this is something that our children are going to pay. That's not really quite accurate. Our children and our grandchildren aren't necessarily going to pay that. What that's going to do, they're going to rack up they're going to print up a bunch more money. It's going to destroy the value of the dollar. It's going to take more dollars to do the same amount of work. Like I said, that law of supply and demand, and prices are going to rise accordingly. And so, when a Big Mac is $35, you're paying the national debt. Does that make sense? It's pretty sneaky. If they tried to raise taxes to match their spending, they'd have had a revolution a long time ago. But this is a way that they can tax us without us seeing it. Because the way it works is, if they send you a bill, if you've got $100,000 in the bank, and they send you a bill for $30,000, 30%. Ooh, ouch. You've got to write them a check. But here's what they can do. They can, instead of sending you a bill, which you'd be hot and bothered about, they just print up the money, and they reduce, they get that money, and by them expanding the money supply, everybody's bank account, the purchasing power, not the number of dollars in there, but the purchasing power of those dollars is reduced by 30%. So, whether you wrote them a check for $30,000 or you had everything that's out on the market go up by 30%, they still robbed you of the ability to redeem your labor for a valuable good or service that you want. That's how they can tax you without you seeing it. Now, not only does this system weaken the individual in order to strengthen the federal government, but then here's where it gets really bad. They take that money and they turn around and they offer it back to the state or the local governments with strings attached. They say, the feds, with this stolen money from you, they say, we will give you this money if you will do this to the people in your state. And They say, okay, we'll do it. Now here's the principle. You work for whoever signs the checks. Now what this does is this is like a wrestling move where you change from being a republic to being an empire. In a republic, the people are at the top of the food chain, and the commands roll downhill from the people on down to the government.
And that's exactly.
And God gave every human being the right to life, liberty, and property, and a corresponding obligation to defend those rights as an individual.
That's right. And folks, this is what this document is that I've just put up on the website. I own my own self. I own my own labor. My property rights to myself and my labor are now perfected and secure before the whole world. Folks, this is the way to do it. And we're doing it as individuals, not mobs, not mobocracy. We're doing this as individuals. And we're standing with other individuals. So yeah, I like that idea. I like being able to keep my own money. I like being able to and I want my government to generate its own money according to the Constitution. Just and you don't have to base it on gold. Where Rockefellers are running their little friggin' flags up and down trying to determine the price of gold on a daily basis while they're having their unspun coffee. But we can, if we base it on our labor, if we base it on our productivity, if we pull the factories, start putting tariffs back on the overseas companies, and oh, you don't think that's happening? Well, GE has just decided to open up and send some of its stuff, whatever it does, to China. That's right. The General Electric, you know, the people that own the radio station that today's show is broadcast now, General Electric is planning to move its 115-year-old X-ray division from Wisconsin to Beijing, Waukesha, Wisconsin. In addition to moving the headquarters, the company will invest $2 billion in China and train more than 65 engineers and create 6 research centers. This is the same GE that made $5.1 billion in the United States last year, but paid no taxes. The same company that employs more people overseas than it does in the United States. Now, let me get this straight. President Obama appointed GE Chairman Jeff Immelt to head his commission on job creation. He's a job czar. Immelt is supposed to help create jobs. I guess the president forgot to tell him which company he was supposed to be creating these jobs in. If this doesn't show you total lack of leadership of this president, I don't know what does. It's time to look at everything we buy, and if any GE or GE subsidiary is a denominational label, yep, you need to check that. And by the way, NATO is Israel-directed mercenary terrorism. The economy's in chain reaction decay. Austerity makes deficits even bigger. You cannot get out of this path of decay by being thrifty, spending less, by raising taxes, because demand falls, bringing the death of supply. The Austrian School of Economics shills of the money power of Rothschild and of Israel world domination tell you that austerity and liquidation of debt, the bankruptcy and turning over of assets to the creditors is the way to restore the economy. That is a lie and an act of premeditated murder by telling them, the ignorant, you to do premeditated murder. That's by telling the ignorant you do what they know will kill you. To do what they know will kill you. only the repudiation, and that's basically what these things do, resort to national treasure money, thin air fiat money, by the authority and will of the people who are sovereign in their own power over the states and the federal government. Immediate distribution of this new money in monthly doses to all the people as the only means by which new money will be introduced into the domestic economy from now on. Resort to balanced trade, abrogation of foreign trade agreements, and a negotiated settlement that gives creditor nations ownership of all the foreign properties of all American corporations will be disincorporated and reconstituted as full liability proprietorships and partnerships. Extensive antitrust action against banking and the media, and the immediate ending of U.S. overseas involvement, bringing troops home by executive order given on Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2013, including the withdrawal of the United States from NATO. Now, what we're doing is presenting you with your letter of intent. And they'll probably try to ignore you because you hope that by keeping your mouth shut and your mood passive, you'll avoid the immediate attention of the killers who are bent on killing most of the world's population and enslaving the rest. But you're wrong. The Israel, the greatest evil the world's ever seen, is coming for you right now with all its might and cunning. Defending yourself will not make things worse. But there's nothing worse than the attack upon you and unfolding. Pakistan with its nuclear power and Iran with the potential to fight Israel are all that is keeping Israel from exerting its power. The power of China, Russia, the U.S., European nations, and India are illusionary because Israel, the Rothschild Zionism, controls them all through the money system. These nations can do nothing for fear of worrying international investments or getting a lower credit rating or capital flight. China has made has made its deals with the Israeli Rothschilds, just as Britain did when the outcome of World War I was in question, just as every successful American politician has done. Zionism has the trust of world Jewry as long as there is no threat that large numbers of Jews will be killed in accomplishing Zionist ends. Once Pakistan, nuclear weapons in the hands of the Muslims, and the potential for nuclear weapons at the hands of Iran are put down by NATO superpower, then Israel will show its true colors. Then they will, without hesitation, settle scores with the pockets of populism found in nations around the world, the strategy to resist and overturn the usury money system. Before they can disarm the last nation they still have reason to fear. Israel seeks to enslave the world, which has been the goal of Zionism, of the Rothschilds, of Zionists, American and British Jewry. Your survival will awaken in you, and you will resist, just like the Eloi finally did in the old movie, The Time Machine, or you will perish at the hands of the warlocks, as the Ovine Eloi did in the original book by H.G. Wells. Resist now. The extra pain they will heap on you because you resisted doesn't really matter. What matters is that together we have a chance to beat them. Humanity has a chance to beat them. And you'll regret ignoring these entities when you defend your life. That you defend your lives. All right. Let's see what else we got. Okay. I've still got a few minutes left here. Let's check. Let's check here. Okay, we got 10 minutes left. All right. Let me hear from Schaefer Cox. You've heard from Naomi Judd in the first half. Now we're listening to Schaefer Cox. He was in the militia and arrested. So here we go.
To make that email worth something that they send to authorize people to spend those make-believe dollars into the economy. Now, what those dollars do is they go out into the economy.
Skip that up a little bit.
You've got to write them a check. But here's what they can do. They can, instead of sending you a bill, which you'd be hot and bothered about, they just print up the money and they reduce, they get that money, and by them expanding the money supply, everybody's bank account, the purchasing power, not the number of dollars in there, but the purchasing power of those dollars is reduced by 30%. So, whether you wrote them a check for $30,000 or you had everything that's out on the market go up by 30%, they still robbed you of the ability to redeem your labor for a valuable good or service that you want. That's how they can tax you without you seeing it. Now, not only does this system weaken the individual in order to strengthen the federal government, but then here's where it gets really bad. They take that money and they turn around and they offer it back to the state or the local governments with strings attached. They say, the feds, with this stolen money from you, they say, we will give you this money if you will do this to the people in your state. And they say, okay, we'll do it. Now here's the principle. You work for whoever signs the checks. Now what this does is this is like a wrestling move where you change from being a republic to being an empire. In a republic, the people are at the top of the food chain, and the commands roll downhill from the people on down to the government. And God gave every human being the right to life, liberty, and property, and a corresponding obligation to defend those rights as an individual, and through the establishing of governments to do the same. So it's only reasonable that as a government gets further and further removed from those people, their power subsequently diminishes. That's how it works. That's the logical chain of command in a free society that's operating under the sound reasoning and rule of law. But you get that money flow reversed, where the Federal Reserve can take it right away from you, give it right to the feds. Boom, we're not a republic anymore, we're an empire, where the chain of command follows the flow of money. And all of a sudden, the most far away, the most distant, the most inaccessible to us of the government is now on top, rather than us. And so what it basically is, to boil it down into real simple terms, is the government is robbing you and giving the state and local government a cut to cooperate. And they have figured out, and they do this in other countries too, watch it. They do it to us and they do it to other countries. They don't roll in here and try to boss you around and tell you how you're going to run your life. No. They buy your friends and make your friends do it. They buy our state. They bribe our state away from us and make our state do it. They give our sheriff's department a bunch of federal funding. And then when we go to the sheriff and we say, hey, sheriff, we elected you. You are very close to the source of authority, which is us. We want you to protect us from anybody who's going to trample on our rights, no matter what they call themselves, no matter how they're organized. We want you to do that, all right? And he says, ooh, I don't know. Those people you want me to protect you from make up a pretty considerable portion of our budget. And so you've got this sheriff with torn allegiance, because we're no longer a free republic. We're a monetary, inflationary empire. Does that make sense? You got that? That is huge. We've got to understand that. They've gone to great lengths to hide that from us. Now, I could go into, in fact I will, because I want to be fair to the other side, even though I think it's totally bogus and you're going to hate it after I tell you. John Maynard Keynes, who was the socialist guru of the 50s, who was a big advocate for this inflationary system, what he said is, he said, yes, I know that when you rob this money from people and then spend it back into the economy, yeah, it hurts them. But you know what? Overall, in general, it's good for us because the end justifies the means. And here's why. Because we take that money from them, and then the government spends it into the economy, and what that does is that creates a frenzy of activity, and more people pile on, and what that does then is it gets everybody all jizzed up and making money and working hard, and the end result is better. The end result is the average person is better off than if we hadn't robbed it from them and give the top another spin. That's the Keynesian model of economics. That is almost, get this, that is almost exclusively what they teach you in business school. And guess who funds business school? Guess who funds the educational, system? Is those fiat dollars. Of course, they're not going to, bash their method of funding. Now, just real briefly, what that actually does is it doesn't create investment. When the government robs from you and spends it into the economy, it creates malinvestment, because it is investment that has sprouted up around a artificial influx of government dollars rather than a natural demand in the market. And so people build their life and their business around this influx of government freshly stolen loot, and that stolen loot is fickle and it goes from place to place. But when they inject it into the economy, it creates a bubble, a stock bubble, a housing bubble, a tech bubble. All these bubbles that we've had, you can trace their funding to injected dollars. Now, why is this good for politicians? Because they can inject it where their friends are. They can inject it to where they need votes. They can inject it to where they need donors for their campaign. This is why the politicians like this system. So, you get a bubble, and then they get caught between a rock and a hard place, and you get foreign holders of dollars getting mad because they're making their dollars that they're holding worth less, and so they pull the dollar hose out of there, and the bubble starts to go down. That's a recession. You know what they taught me in high school? In the high school textbook? I was homeschooled, but they taught in the high school textbook, depressions are causeless anomalies. End quote. That's what they taught us. That's FDR, okay? This is the monetary system, okay? I've spent enough time on it. That's all on that. The next thing that we got to understand about how our system works is that, you know what, our senators and our congressmen in Washington, they're not nearly as powerful as you might think. One thing that I've learned from dealing with government and talking to these guys and trying to get down to the nitty-gritty of why can we not be free, why can we not do this, is they are afraid of the agencies. They're afraid of the IRS, the ATF, the DEC, all these other alphabet soup agencies, because what you do is you get this kind of a separate animal from government. In our government we're supposed to have the judicial that reviews and applies, the executive that implements it, and the legislative that writes it. And what you do is you get an agency or a bureau. What the heck's a bureau? We had ATF come to one of our meetings like this. We had 1,000 people, and we asked them, what's a bureau? They didn't know. I said, well, do you know what an agency is? No, they didn't know that either. Well, we got the Internal Revenue Service. What's a service? They didn't know that either. We got the Transportation Security Administration. What's an administration? What are these things? Certainly you know what you are. They didn't know. We called the agencies and the services. They didn't know either. I don't know. I've worked here for 30 years and never thought that question. It's like they were like Dilbert, They worked there all this life in this cubicle and they don't know why.
All right. That was Schaefer Cox. I am Clay Douglas. I am getting the information out to you. I will have more data. Some of the stuff that we put up here, I'll put up these shows. You need to pass it out. You need to let people know that there's somebody out here that cares about you. There's somebody out here that's been in this battle for 20 years that they failed to kill. They tried to kill me right after they killed my friend Bill Cooper, after we were putting our magazines together. The whole story's in my book, Mystery Babylon. And you want to know what's happening in the future, folks? Then read my other books, One Bloody Alabaster Eye, that takes you into the future, that shows what our future is going to be. And the future I wrote about in my Solomon series, which will be coming out in a few months as soon as I finish the editing. The information that came out of there is accurate, it's going on today, and guess what? I wrote it 40 years ago. Talking about the whole marijuana thing, the victimless